Hello, it's Quinn Cunningham with 42 Training Concepts, and I wanted to discuss how to maintain your firearms, mostly cleaning of the firearms. So I've got a Glock pistol right here. Beginning of the video, you probably saw the 4 firearm safety rules. So let's make sure we always adhere to those. Some of the firearms you have to actually, the semi-automatic firearms, you have to press the trigger to break it down. So I'm going to make sure this handgun is clear of ammunition. From there, with a Glock, sometimes people have some issue with this. So what I do is I grab the grip like a monkey paw. I take my other hand, make an L, and my thumb goes underneath the back strap like that, and I grasp the pistol like that. From there, I pull it back, pull it out of battery. I'll pull down on the slide lock, or excuse me, the takedown, let that go forward. How do I know that's engaged? It's because the slide lock will be halfway down, right here on the side of the pistol. And from there, it is a Glock. I have to press the trigger to field strip it. Now, most semi-automatic firearms are going to break down into 4 parts. You've got the slide, you've got the frame, the barrel, and the recoil spring assembly. So let's talk about what we're going to need to clean. First of all, you want some good quality products that are designed for firearms. You don't want to use WD-40 when you lubricate because that's a penetrating solvent. It can get into the primers. It can also get underneath the finish and damage the firearm. So I like M-Pro 7 because it is water-based. It's not an oil-based, petroleum-based. It's water-based. So it's odorless and tasteless. Is it tasteless? It is odorless. Not tasteless. Not tasteless. Not taste. Yeah. Not tasteless. Not tasteless. So what you'll need to clean these firearms is a good gun cleaner. M-Pro 7 has 3 products: a gun cleaner, a bore, solvent or gel, and then you've got your gun oil. You're also going to need some kind of cleaner degreaser. There's a whole bunch of different ones on the market. Gun scrubber is pretty good. I just had some leftover powder blast, so I'll be utilizing those products as a final rinsing. So let's get started. For your actual tools you're going to need: toothbrush, that goes a long way. You're going to need a bore brush in your caliber. I would not use stainless. Stainless will degrade the bore greatly. Dental picks, go to the dentist, ask them for some broken dental picks. They'll probably give them to you for free. You're going to need a rod. I like the Dewey rods, they're coated. You've got a loop right here to put a patch through. They also have another type of device called a jag, where the patch doesn't go through the loop like a needle, it goes over the top. And then sometimes you have to get that really bad stuff around the chamber and the breech face and the chamber wall. A good knife works for that as well. Also Q-tips, rags, things like that. Now, since lead is always a concern, it's probably a good idea to utilize some latex gloves. The reason I utilize that is if I'm at the range shooting all day, I don't want to bring any of that lead into my home with my family. So I like to put on the latex gloves. Plus, it's easier to clean up your hands and underneath your fingernails, things like that. So apparently, I should do a video on how to put on latex gloves. What we're going to do first, we're going to take the gun cleaner and the frame. I'm going to take the frame, spray down, generous application on the frame, and then scrub. So I'm done scrubbing the frame. When you scrub the frame, don't get too aggressive. You've got some parts that are not really designed to move in specific directions. You've got springs and things like that depending on your firearm. So let's not get too aggressive in there, but you need to get all that carbon out. Alright, so once I've scrubbed that down, got some on my face. Once I scrub that down, I let it sit. I let the gun cleaner do its work. From there, I'm going to move on to the slide. When I do the slide, I'm going to do the slide muzzle down. The reason I do it muzzle down is because I have a firing pin channel right here where your firing pin lives. Now, Sir Isaac Newton invented gravity in 1792. And so that gravity is going to take all the debris and stuff back into the firearm itself. So when we clean that, let's have gravity help us out and clean that muzzle down. Again, what I do, nice, generous, even on the outside, and scrub it. All right, so once that's good, I'm going to sit it down and just let that solvent do its work. Before I really get into any scraping or anything like that, let that solvent work. For my recoil spring assembly, all I'm going to utilize is a dry rag to clean that off. This does not require any lubricant, any solvent, anything like that. I just put it in my hand and then twist it. The recoil spring assembly and several other parts in your firearm have a preventative maintenance schedule. So it's probably a good idea to change this recoil spring out every 5,000 rounds. If not, you're going to you could possibly cause some issues with the firearm and some damage. Now they'll keep working, but just to make sure, probably a good idea to clean it, or excuse me, to change it out every 5,000 rounds. Good thing about the Gen 3 Glocks is these are super cheap. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. Now, the barrel. For the barrel, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrub the exterior a little bit, get that all nice and saturated first, and then scrub the feed ramp, chamber wall. That's the area where the breech face meets. Scrub that nice and good. You're going to see a lot of carbon there, so that's a good idea to pull out the knife, scrape that carbon off, and the feed ramp itself. Now for the barrel, the bore of the barrel. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bore brush on. A trash can right here. I'm going to put on the bore gel onto the bore brush itself. And then scrub. I'm going to press from the chamber end towards the end of the barrel. Some guys get pretty spun up, especially precision rifle shooters. Some guys will push it through and then remove this brush and then pull back out. It's a combat firearm. I don't see a reason to do that with a semi-automatic gun. I could see that. I could see that with a precision rifle, but for these purposes, I don't really see a need to that. But if you want to maintain that integrity of the crown, just go ahead and remove that brush every time. So I'm going to scrub this out. And then I'm going to let that sit and let it do its work. For the brush, these bronze brushes, it's probably a good idea when you're done. I used to do this as a sniper. Once I was done utilizing the brush, I would dip it in rubbing alcohol to take all that old stuff off. I take all that old stuff off, and so it will not get back into the firearm the next time I try to clean it, or into my solvent if I'm utilizing a jar. That being said, I'm going to say it. People are going to make fun of me. I hate the bore snakes, because you are just running back all that stuff you cleaned out over and over and again, and you're placing it back into the bore. So I'm not a big fan of those. Yeah, they're easy, but when it comes to a firearm that's going to save my life and my family's life, maybe easing isn't the best. All right, so it's time to return to the frame. So I'm going to take a patch, I'm going to take some Q-tips, and I'm going to clean everything inside that I can reach. Now, some of these parts and pieces you can't really reach. That's when you find a good armor and you have your armorer take your firearm apart, and from there have him do what's called a detail strip and clean, and get all the internal pieces clean as well. probably a good idea, if this is a self-defense handgun, to have an armorer check out these firearms once a year, annually. Okay, so frame looks pretty good. For brevity of time, I'm not going to get too deep into it. Now let's go to the slide. Same thing. I'm going to rub down, utilizing patches, utilizing Q-tips, anything else I need to get into the nooks and crannies to get all the solvent out. And when the solvent comes out, hopefully the carbon, the brass shavings, lead, if you shoot lead, will come out as well. This is the time where I'm going to take a little bit of extra attention on the breech face itself, and I'm going to get out the dental pick and really scrub those corners. Ooh, that was a good chunk. Underneath the extractor itself. Okay. Now I'm going to go back, wipe it all out. All right. Slide looks good. Make sure you get the outside of the slide too. Slide looks good. Now the barrel. For the barrel. What I do with the barrel is I will do a wet patch. A wet patch with my solvent. In this case, the M-Pro 7 bore gel. I'm going to run that through. A couple times, might have to change the patch. A couple times, might have to change the patch. For the brevity of time, I am not going to get too into the woods with this. So, I take the patch and I run it through. At this point in time, I'd probably change it out, but you guys get the point. So I run that through. Get rid of it. Now I'm going to do a dry patch. Dry patch. If I'm getting any kind of carbon discoloration on here, I am going to go back and do a wet patch. If that doesn't work, then I'm going to do the bore again with a bore brush. From there, I'm going to clean out the outside surfaces, make sure that feed rack is nice and clean. The locking block, etc., etc. Now, we have cleaned our firearm mostly. They mostly come out at night. Mostly. Now the final step. This is a step that a lot of people forget. And if you don't do this step, especially with a petroleum-based product, you don't get everything out that you've put in as far as the solvents, it could start to gum up a little bit and cause some issues. So use a good cleaner degreaser. I'm not going to tell you to use a brake cleaner that is chlorine and acetone free. I'm not going to tell you to do that. I'm not going to tell you to do that because it's cheaper. So I'm going to get a good quality product that is made for firearms, that is not a brake cleaner. A brake cleaner that would be non-acetone and non-chlorine. I'm going to use gun scrubber or powder blast or something like that. And I'm going to spray the frame down first. Spray the frame, let it sit, and you will see that the polymer and the metal itself, what will happen is it takes all the oils out and all the solvents. So it's going to be a gray color. I'm going to do the same thing with the slide. Muzzle down. Muzzle down. Now, one thing I failed to mention, and I probably should right now. If you have aftermarket sites like True Glow, or one of those where it has the fiber optic tube with the tritium insert that are glued in, careful when you're scrubbing and utilizing a cleaner degreaser, because that could dislodge those tubes. If you use a good quality site like 10.8 Performance, You will never have to do that because they are the best. Now, with the barrel, I usually don't do this process on the barrel unless I have a lot of stuff going on with it, and I don't think I need it on this one. It looks really good. I was able to get all the nooks and crannies. So I'm not even going to do that step with this guy. The reason is this doesn't have a lot of crevices and nooks and crannies that I can't get tools and really small Q-tips into. So for that purpose, I'm just going to do it on the slide itself and the frame. Now I'm going to wait a certain amount of time. I'm going to wait till this is all dry. But since you're here, I am just going to scrub it off and wipe off all the excess. Right? Now I'm going to do the same thing with the slide. And you get the point. Now what's going to happen, like I said, is this the polymer is going to turn gray and the metal is going to turn gray. You can probably see that discoloration right there. So what that is it's the actual cleaner degreaser sucking all the oils out of the metal. So we're going to have to replace those. So what we're going to do next is put the firearm back together. So right now I have the slide together with the barrel and the recoil spring assembly. I have the frame right here. Now let's talk about lubrication. There's a lot of people who put way too much oil on their semi-automatic handguns. Way too much oil. I have been an armor for several years. I'm going on, I think, 17 years as an armor. And I have seen firearms that had so much lubrication that the firing pin itself was hydrolocked and it didn't move. If that individual needed that gun to save their lives or their family's lives, it would not have fired. So you're going to use 4+ drops of oil. That's it. With a rifle, you oil the crap out of it. Rifles will work through malfunctions with more oil. Handguns will not. So 4+. I'll talk about the plus here in a minute. So for a Glock, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a half a drop. Now let me talk about that real quick. A drop of oil is defined as Times New Roman, capital O, number 12 font. I didn't come up with that. The handgun manufacturers came up with that. Everybody knows Microsoft Word. Everybody knows Times New Roman. So the unit of measurement on a drop of oil, Times New Roman, number 12 font, capital O. So I'm going to put a half a drop on each frame rail, each of the 4 frame rails, just a half. Now you have, that's 2. We already have 2. On a Glock you have a connector. What that connector looks like is back here at the back of the firearm is a little hook. If you place the firearm on its left side, the hook is going to be sticking up like this. You put a drop on that hook and let it go into the firearm. The connector is a long piece. So I put it on the hook, rotate it, and it goes down into the firearm. This lubricates between the trigger bar and the connector itself. The trigger bar rubs on the connector. You want to have some lubricant on that. That way you have a nice clean trigger point. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is I will just go ahead and take this apart so you can see what we're doing. I'm going to put 1 drop of oil on the barrel. From there, I'm going to rub it all around. You want to get it on the shelf right here on the hood of the barrel and anywhere there is a contact point. Okay. If you really want to use more oil, go ahead and put extra oil. What I would do is I would get it on a Q-tip and then dab it on spots where you see a lot of high wear. One of the places right here, now we just put some oil on there, is right here underneath the slide. Okay. You're going to notice some wear marks underneath the slide as well. So if you want to, go ahead and put that there. But I caution you, too much oil can cause a problem. You don't want to be a Houston Oiler. Okay, now I am going to put the firearm together. And I talked about 4+. 4+. 4+, what I'll do is I'm going to take a patch, put some oil on that patch, and rub down the external surfaces. Remember, we removed the oil and all that stuff from those external surfaces. Let's rub down those external surfaces pretty good. Get them all nice and shiny. That way we don't have any corrosion. You know, you guys living on the coast of the ocean, it might be a good idea to throw on a little extra oil. I'll give you that. But where I'm at, very dry, arid, high desert, and I've just seen so many problems, and I don't want anybody to have an issue deploying their firearm when they need to because of bad maintenance. Okay, so that was the plus. Put some oil on the patch, wipe it down, and then I'm going to take a dry patch and then wipe it off. So, firearm is all clean, ready to go, right? Are you going to utilize it to protect yourself or your family? Well, let's make sure. What I do now, after it's all nice and clean, is I do a safety check, essentially. So, I run the action a few times, make sure it's nice and smooth. While I'm cleaning it, I probably should have mentioned I look for some parts and pieces in the firearm itself to make sure they're there and they haven't fallen off. I make sure the sights are there. It's always a good thing. Okay. Now I run the action 3 times. From there, I'm going to place an empty magazine in the magazine well. Lock to the rear. Lock to the rear. Lock to the rear. Power of 3. From there, I am going to make sure that it will actually feed around. So I've got some dummy rounds right here. What we're looking for on this step is feeding, extraction, ejection. When I do this, I'm going to check my trigger reset as well. If you're a trigger prep kind of guy, cool, but you want to check that trigger reset to make sure that your trigger is actually working and returning. And it locked on the last round. Now, how do I know it's fired? I'm going to take the number 2 remember those old number 2 pencils? I forget how to say it. Place it down the bore, press the trigger. There it is. I'll do it again. I do everything in 3s. For redundancy, I guess. And then one more time. Okay, so the magazine works. It is firing, it is extracting, it is ejecting, and it is all nice and clean. So there you have it. That is how you clean a semi-automatic pistol, specifically a Glock. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Send us an email. Check out our website, 42trainingconcepts.com. Check us out on Facebook. Appreciate you watching. And as always, God bless America.